that note in. I've only got a couple more classes, but
start recording.
All right. So this is Learning to Use a Knitting Loom with Debbie Cole, and it's now being recorded.
Hello. I don't know if the person is in the class today. Somebody requested, hey, I'd love it if someone would teach how to do a knitting loom. If you're here, give us a shout out. I had someone I was trying to get to teach, but he decided he wasn't accomplished enough. So I said, well, I've done knitting on the knitting loom. I'll go ahead and teach it. Which means that the last few days I've done some reminding myself how to do this. I have done a sock. This is all done on the knitting loom. And I've almost finished another sock. I'm just getting to the toe now. This is what's generally sold as a sock loom. The really cool thing about it is over here, you can change how big the opening you work on is, which is really cool, especially for socks, if you want them smaller or bigger in diameter. But you'll see a ton of different looms. Let me get all this off my lap. You'll see these guys, and these guys can be used for what we're doing today. They can also be used for double knitting, which isn't something I'm going to talk about in class, but if you go to my link here, my handout is my website for this. There's some links there for how to do double knitting, and it gives you, in this case, it would give you something that's this wide, and it's a double thickness of yarn throughout. You can also use the knitting loom to do straight knitting. So something like this would be great if you wanted to do a baby blanket or something, if you just went from one end back and then kept going. And we will talk about that later today, tonight. You've also seen something that looks a lot like this, that's got 4 or 5 or so different looms in it. This is a sampler of some stuff I did on the loom just to remind myself and show myself what I could do. Let me see if that shows up better on, whoops, pick the right camera, dear. I tried to change my microphone instead of my camera. Okay, there's my lap. This is one of my looms, and this was me just starting out. Don't know what happened there exactly. Just starting out doing a knit stitch, doing purl, and then a row of purl stitch, and then a row of knit and purl. So you can do ribbing. Do color changing, a stripe of white, a stripe of green. And then here I was doing a white stitch, a green stitch, a white stitch, and alternating those. And then I went back to just knitting. Now there's a couple, well, there's a bunch of stitches, but we're only going to talk about a couple of them today. Whoops, I forgot to get my yarn ready. Hold on a sec here. One stitch is the first one I'm going to show you is this one. It looks like knitting, kind of. It's the one that comes with the instructions of most of the looms that you buy, other than the sock loom, which just says incredible stuff. This is another stitch that you can do that actually looks just like knitting. Oh, one thing I forgot to ask. Can I find out how many of you already know how to knit? You don't have to know how to knit. I just want to know, do I have anyone here who knows how to knit?
I know how to regular knit.
Yep.
Not,
Two
but not
needles.
this knit.
Yeah. Anybody know how to 2 needles regular knit?
Yes.
Just
Not
garter
anymore.
stitch.
Okay.
I know
Alrighty.
basic.
So mostly not. I will say a few things aimed for knitter folks. If I say something that needs an explanation because I assumed you knew something you didn't, please yell at me and let me know. The first thing I'm going to tell you is when you knit, there's two stitches. One is called the knit stitch, one is called the purl stitch. The secret is, here's the knit stitch here, here's the purl stitch. The purl stitch is just the back of the knit stitch. So it's just, am I doing the knit stitch face forward or face back? And we will talk about that later. Now, I told you this was a round sample that I made, which actually is like, oh, that could be kind of a cute cuff pattern somewhere in there. I don't know, whatever. And I said that you can do straight knitting. And this is a piece of straight knitting. Where's my camera so you can see? There we go. Sorry. This was done on my small round loom, and it's a straight piece side to side, and we'll talk about that later. So the fun part, here's my smallest loom. I picked that one because it would be quickest. The looms usually have these round ones, especially this little knobby here. This little knob is there for a couple different reasons. One of them is to let you know, oh, you're back at the beginning again. The other is that's a way to hold your thread when you're doing something else and your thread's going to be in the way. They also come with something that looks like this. This is your knitting tool that you'll be using to move the thread on the pegs. If you don't have this, you could look online. I'm sure you can buy them if you go to one of the people that sells the looms, or if you just go to eBay or whatever. I assume it'd be called a knitting loom pick or something like that, because as you can tell, this is the easiest thing to lose in the whole setup. You can find your looms fine, but this gets lost. So we are now going to start. And there is, oh, actually, let me share screen for a minute and show you some of what whoop, that's not the screen I want to share. I was going
Can I
to
ask
share.
a question?
Yes, please. At any point, I just keep talking. So at any point, feel free to interrupt me and say, well, what?
So if you don't have that knitting pick,
Yes.
could you substitute for when you've lost it, a crochet hook or an awl or something similar?
That's right. Thank you. That was the other half of my thought, and I totally forgot that. Yes, if you have a crochet hook, if you have a nail, and I'm going to say that's not too terribly sharp, but this is a fairly sharp thing. So anything that you have that's going to give you a point like this and let you pick up the threads. Something with a fairly small point, if you're using a crochet hook, you're going to use one of the little steel ones. But anything that you have, a toothpick would probably even work if you were desperate. Something like that, a bamboo skewer cut down to size, because bamboo skewers are everything in crafting.
That's really good because for sprang, I now have 100 of them.
Exactly. And you will lose that package and you will have to buy like 12 more packages. And when you die, somebody's going to wonder, how come you did so much barbecuing? Like what? Well, actually back here, this is my craft web page. And I love this quote that I found on a friend's page. The art of teaching is the art of assisting discovery. And this class is very much going to be assisting discovery because, like I said, I just reacquainted myself with it recently. So if your questions are too advanced, that will be an exercise for the students. But I will get you started on the road and help you discover the cool, wonderful things you can do here. Over here in this column, I have all kinds of different fiber art stuff, not all of which are mine. And one of them is knitting looms and yeah, knitting looms and spool knitting. And spool knitting is, I don't know about you guys, but I grew up with um, a spool knitter. A spool knitter or a knitting Nancy, or a French knitter. What did you do? This is a picture of one. Basically, I mean, the old ones were just a wooden thread spool with 4 nails on the top. Nails with, I think they're called roofing nails or something. The one with the little heads, not the big heads. Um, and they've been around forever, either as a toy or as a tool. I've got a link to the Wikipedia article here that tells you a little bit about it. I tell you some history here. The concept of spool knitting and knitting on looms is not new. It goes back for a fairly long time. And with a lot of things, fiber art, you never know exactly how far back it goes because things don't always get kept. But I've got several things under here, how to knit on a loom. And where I want to take you right now is this page. This is the one. I love their illustrations. And I've got some other pages that give you information too. And if you want to get this up on your screen somewhere while I'm showing you it in real life, if you have, you can split your screen like that, then feel free. What we're going to do now, yeah, finishing nails. Thank you. That's what they're called. What we're going to do is wrap the, and some of those pages also have information about what size yarn is best to use on what size looms, how far apart the pegs should be for different yarn types and all of that. Again, exercise for the reader. See, is this light? Nope, that light's necessary. Exercise for the reader as to what you want to do. I'm using a worsted weight right now, and you can see it it closed up just nicely. We're going to take the yarn and we're going to wrap it around this little knobby here just to keep it out of the way. If you know how to use a half hitch or two works really nicely here just to keep the thread in place. Now, what we're going to do is what's called an E-wrap. And they show it to you laying down flat. I like to do it this way. It's easier for me. What you're going to do is you're going to bring your thread behind the peg, come bring it up, around, back down, and over to the next peg. And you're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. Now, you know you've done it right if you've got one stitch in front, one piece of yarn in front. If you do it the other way around, you get 2, and that would be wrong. You don't want 2 stitches per peg, you only want 1. So you come down between them, up around the back, up behind the back, down between the 2 pegs, around the back, up over the front, back around the back to the next peg. I've not expressed this out loud before. I haven't. With fiber arts, I usually come up with a mantra for my students. I haven't done that yet, so I'm inventing it as I go. So it's around the back to the next peg, around the front, behind to the next peg, around the front, and you're going to keep doing it that way. Now, I'm going to show you the really fun and exciting thing about this wrap if you accidentally let it go. It will unwrap like crazy. So you've got to keep tension on it or keep your finger here as you work so that if you accidentally let go, it's not going to go flying away. Whichever works best for you. With most, if not all fiber arts, tension is the thing. You don't want this to be too tight. You don't want it to be too loose either. But especially right now, err on the side of loose. If possible, keep them all at the same tension and keep them all at not terribly tight tension. If you have a small loom, go ahead and use that one for right now. If not, just keep going and follow along as you watch me. Follow along doing your wrapping. Now, I've done my E-wraps and I've gone all the way around. Yay! But I'm not done yet, because if any of you do lucette, you'll know that the rule for lucette is anytime that there's 2 loops on a prong, the bottom loop comes over the top. Well, this one's very similar. Whoops. But the important part is you have to have 2 loops on every peg in order to do your work. There are several. Oh, also, I will say, I am showing you the E-wrap cast on. There is other ways to do it, one of which is the chain cast on, where whoever it was who asked about crochet hooks, we got something for you. You chain with your crochet hook from one loop to the other. It makes a more solid cast on. And if you want to do something, if you look at this, this is my cast on edge. And you can see that's very light, very loose and lacy, which may not be what you intended, but this is what the E-wrap cast on looks like. A chained cast on, I presume, would be tighter than that. So we're going around and we're doing another row of E-wraps. You can, I'm going to be teaching you other stitches later. Your second row can be one of those stitches instead of E-wraps. But for right now, I'm just going to show you E-wraps and then we'll move on. Okay, so I'm going to get to the end here. And you can see why I picked my smallest loom. Alrighty. Yay, I've made it to the end. Every loop, every peg has 2 loops on it. So I'm going to wrap this around, maybe even half hitch it around that little nubbin there to just keep my thread tight and happy where it is. And I'm going to use this as a starting point. I'm going to go again counterclockwise. And I assume that there's a right-handed and a left-handed way to do this. And if you're left-handed, you could do it the other way around. But I'm not sure it really makes that much of a difference. If I have any left-handers here, you'll have to try this method, see if it works for you. If it doesn't, reverse what I've done and or try Googling knitting loom left-handed. And I
was
apologize.
actually taught how to do it the left-handed way, because I don't do it the way you do it. I do it the opposite direction.
Okay.
And it works just fine.
And yeah, it works. I assume it works exactly the same one way or the other, as long as you only have one thread in front with your E-wrap.
Yep. That's exactly.
The only thing is to be consistent. That's the only important part. But I'm also not positive that it matters for a left-hander or a right-hander which direction you went. Anyway, so we've got our 2 E-wraps done, or at least I do. Hopefully you've caught up with me at this point. What you want to do for this stitch is we're just going to, oh, and in fact, let me share my screen again down here. Come on. And if we go to this page, nope, up one, sorry. This is where I found out that KB stands for knitting board. Duh. And I love this page. It's lovely. Here's single knit. Here's the double knit I told you about. Here's sock loom knitting, which is somewhat different because we've got heel and toe to do, and we've got ribbing to do up top and whatnot. And if you come over here to single knitting, which is what we're doing, they show you the chain cast on, the E-wrap cast on, and a couple ways to bind off. And they show you the stitches. Now, the interesting part is they don't show you the E-wrap stitches. They actually just sort of tend to go away from that, which is interesting. If you go to this Nitty article, Nitty is a lovely magazine, by the way, and they show you a bunch of different looms. And they show you, this is the chain cast on that they'll show you. And then, okay, they're doing the flat stitch too. Okay. None of these have the stitch I'm about to show you, but what am I doing? I want to stop share, sorry. So what we do for the E-wrap stitch is we just pick up the bottom one and we take it over the top. And most of them show you coming down and picking up the stitch. Can you see okay at this angle? Is it too backwards for you? Let's see, maybe this is better. Most of them show you coming down and bringing it up and over. I find it just as useful to come up to bring the stitch up and over. I think, because I almost made the mistake once, I think they're trying to keep you from splitting this top stitch. If you go down, you're not going to endanger your top loop there. So what you're going to do is you're going to go around, whether you pick from the bottom to the top or the top to the bottom, you're going to go around and the bottom loop is going to go over the top and it's going to hang out in the back. If you did this too tight, this is going to be a little difficult for you, but the E-wrap is pretty forgiving as far as that goes. And you're just going to bring them all up and over to get one more row done. And you can see they're kind of just hanging out here in the back. You've started creating fabric here. And finish it off. Now, do people want me to do one more row? Oh, and now I'm pushing them down to the bottom because the next time I use these loops, I'm going to want them to be underneath my new loops. Do people want me to do the E-wrap, do another row of E-wrap, or go on to the next stitch? Any opinions? Okay.
I'm fine to go on to the next stitch.
That's what I'm thinking. It sounds like nobody needs to be here still. So let me share my screen. Share screen. Come back to here. And there are, besides that stitch, which is the E-wrap stitch, there's the knit stitch, the flat stitch, and the purl stitch. They have a U stitch here, which I didn't really look into. Yeah, I didn't really look into that one. And apparently there's a bunch of other stitches you can find too. What we're going to do next is the knit stitch. It's, no, I'm going to do the flat stitch next. The flat stitch is kind of easier and kind of more difficult. The flat stitch, you have to worry about your tension more, but it's the same bottom stitch goes over the top stitch that we just did. The fun part about it is you don't have to do the E-wrap. You just take your thread and you lay it over the top of the peg. You take the bottom stitch and put it over the thread that you've laid over it. Now, I'm pulling it really tight here, and that's a mistake. I don't want to pull it tight because this thread here is what I'm going to be bringing up and over next time. And if I pull too tight, it's going to be very, very difficult. And I know this for actual fact because I pulled it too tight the first time I did it. But the other thing is you also want to be careful that the thread is being held in place and doesn't fall off the top of the peg when you're trying to bring the bottom peg over it. I found that holding it down toward the bottom of the loom is helpful because then it's kind of trending downward. Sometimes you may need to use your finger to help get that stitch over there. Try not to pull too tight. Okay. And you might find it easier on this one to go. And now see what I just did here? Be very careful about that. Make sure the stitch goes all the way to the back. You might find it easier to go from top to bottom with your pick when you do this. Oops. Now, the difference between this stitch and the E-wrap stitch that we did is this right here. These big open stitches are the E-wrap stitches that I did. These are the flat stitch and the knit stitch. There, you can see it a little bit better there. The knit stitch actually looks like a knit, like you knit it with knitting needles. This stitch is bigger and more open. Now, the bigger and more open stitches is a lot of fun. And especially if you wanted to do a grocery bag or something, this is going to have more give than the knit stitches will. So this would make a great string bag with this. It would make a fun little floppy hat. And as you can guess, these knitting looms are often made or used to make hats. They, on one of the websites that I showed you, there's also a really cool bag that they made out of one of them. That's just kind of this hat turned upside down with a drawstring through it. You can also, since, as I mentioned, you can go from side to side without going in a circle. You can make scarves. You can make blankets. If your loom isn't big enough to make a full width of a blanket, you can make strips, blanket strips, and sew them together to make a full blanket. So I've gotten to the end of my row because I'm back at my knob here, and I've done all flat stitches. I'm going to do it again, but these thread that I started with, I've got to release it from this knob at some point. Otherwise, the stuff that I'm working on is just going to get all bunched up here. So I'm going to unstring it, and I'm going to use my pick back here to just pull it through to the inside so that it's out of my way. It's in here now, hanging down, not a problem. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to do my flat stitch again, just laying this over the top. Going to do one more row of flat stitch, and then I'm going to show you the knit stitch, which looks the same in the finished work as the flat stitch, but it's a little more, whoops, and see, if you saw that, that was me knocking the, oh, I forgot to push them all down, nice. That was me knocking the top loop off as I was trying to take the bottom loop up over the top. Anyway, the knitting stitch in my samples ends up looking really pretty much the same as the flat stitch, but the knitting stitch gives you more thread, more yarn in your stitch. So you don't have the problem I'm having now where my flat stitch might have been a little too tight in this section, and I'm having a little bit of a problem taking it up over the top.
I'm glad it's not just me.
Nope. This is why I was debating whether to show you guys the flat stitch or not, but it's something you're going to run into. And so I wanted to give you a chance to play with it. You can see as you're doing it and as I'm doing it, tension is really important on this one. If you pull it too tight, trying to get it over the top is going to be difficult. And depending on how you've done it, you may run into sections where the tension is tighter and sections where the tension is looser. It's a really straightforward and simple stitch, but tensioning is a word that rhymes with stitch. So I've gone around twice now, and I don't know if you can see. I haven't really done enough yet for you to take a look. We are going to do the knit stitch in a minute, but first I'm going to mute myself for a second. Because I'm sitting here under this blanket and under this hot light, and I needed to yell at Tim to turn the air conditioner on. So next we're going to do the knit stitch, and let me share screen again with you and come to here. Come on. And we're going to back up one. Thank you, Timothy. And this is the KB webpage again. And I'm going to go to the knit stitch this time. Now the knit stitch is more complicated than the flat stitch, but doing the knit stitch will also prepare you for the excuse me, I've suddenly gotten the hiccups, will prepare you for the purl stitch. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay the thread over the top like we did last time. We're going to reach up with the pick. We're going to grab that thread and pull it back down through the lower loop. Then we're going to pull that up over the peg and settle that new loop over the peg. And I'll show you this in person. It sounds complicated and it's a little kind of weird when you first start doing it, but it oddly gets to make sense after a while. So this is one time when you do want to come from the bottom. Oh, wait, sorry, stop sharing the screen. There we go. You are going to want to come down here through the bottom of your bottom loop. You're going to reach up to where your top loop is. You're going to rake your pick down and pull that top loop down through the bottom loop. Can you see that here?
Yeah.
So I've created this new loop. Doesn't need to be that big. And holding on to the other end of the thread, I'm going to pull this so that the bottom loop, which is now on top, is going to pop off the top of my peg, and I'm going to put the new loop on top of the peg. And then I'm going to keep doing that. So I reach up under the loop, grab the top loop, rake it down to create a new loop, pop it up, and it helps if you hold the thread tight, and then pop this back down. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with having to use your fingers to do this, to pull it up, and to put this down. As you're learning how to do it, you'll find it's not so easy to do it as if you've been doing it for years. And sometimes it takes various different fingers and motions to get it to work the way you want it to. Right now, I've been using the pick finger, the index finger on my pick hand to help me do it too. Because the first one or two worked perfectly, which never happens when I'm demonstrating. And now, not so much as I'm talking and demonstrating. And that's a thing that can happen if you're not careful how you pull it. And
Yeah,
that's,
I missed totally the beginning of this because I was trying to finish up my last row.
so at the beginning, first of all, you're going to push all your stitches down, not all the way to the bottom, but down. And on the very first stitch, you're going to take your thread, lay it on top of the peg over the initial stitch. You're going to take your pick up under the bottom stitch. You're going to bring it down on top of the top stitch, rake it down to pull that top stitch through in a loop. You're going to use that loop and the other thread to help pull that bottom loop that's now on the top up off the peg and settle that new loop down on it. Did you see that? Going to come up under the peg, up under the loop, come down over the top loop, rake and pull it down, pull that initial loop off, put the new loop on. And you may need to use fingers, hands, toes, whatever, to help you get this done. It's a little awkward and weird when you're first doing it. I remember that when I was doing my socks, it became super simple, easy to do. So did you get that? The person who asked about it?
I think so. I'm attempting it now.
Okay, I can also share my screen again. Here we've taken and we've laid the thread over on the peg above the existing loop. We've come up under the existing loop, grabbed the top thread, pulled it down through the existing loop. This is the existing loop. This is the top thread. And then we're pulling that up so that the existing loop pops off, and we're settling that new loop down as the loop for next time we go around. And it's awkward and cumbersome at first, and it feels like you don't quite know what you're doing. And like I say, it may take a couple different hands to work on it. I'm finding tonight that if I put some extra tension on my working thread, the yarn that goes back to the ball, that's helping me to direct my loop to go to where I want it to go. Is everybody working on that right now?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
just very slow.
Yes. Every time I take classes like this, I'm always one of the last people to get my row done. And I can't understand how come the teacher's going so fast. And now I find myself as the teacher going, oh, I'm the one that's going too fast now. Okie dokie. But I do
Mine's
want
also, I'm
Go on.
super, super tight too, so I'm finding it difficult.
the second time you go around on the knit stitch, you'll find that it's easier to do. This one is more forgiving and has more thread in the loop so that it's easier to bring it up. That flat stitch, if you've done it tight, can be a problem. But I really, really want to emphasize to you, it has been several years since I worked on those socks that I showed you. A week ago, I did this sample, which is all the east. And this is all I did, was just this much of it. And then yesterday, mostly last night, I did this sample with knitting in the bottom section here, e-knit or e-stitch, knitting and purl, and then this flat section, all knit stitch. This is all I've done recently. And if I look like an expert who knows what I'm doing, realize that's only with a few hours work. This is not something I have been doing for a million years. So it's something that's fairly quick and easy to pick up. Your mileage may vary, but it's with every fiber art that you learn, you feel totally at odds, totally confused about what you're doing when you started out. You you feel like it's not working and your hands don't know what to do and it's all difficult. But that gets better. Your job right now is to just practice and play with it. See which of these stitches you like the best, figure out what you want to do with it, and just make samplers and practice pieces. And the piece that you do tonight isn't going to turn out very pretty, and it's not going to turn out to be anything unless you end up making some kind of a weird, cute little cuff thing. I keep insisting this has to be something, but I don't have a clue what it is. So know that, you know, even if you feel all awkward and weird right now, it will get better. And it probably won't take all that much time. So shall I go around with the knit stitch one more time to give everyone time to get their knit stitching done?
Sounds like a plan.
Considering I'm only a quarter of the way around.
Exactly. And those of you with longer looms are, of course, at a bigger disadvantage, or longer or bigger looms are at a disadvantage. But this too will pass. And we've got at least another hour, and depending on Lisa, we can stay longer if people need to or want to stay longer.
I have no commitment after this. We can keep going as long as people need.
Okie dokie.
Yeah,
And
some of you were in
I'm
California.
I'm sorry, what?
Some of you were in California.
I understand completely. And here is what I will tell you, as I've told everyone else. You, I believe on my website, it should have my email address. My website over here. Yep, you can email Lynette. For those of you who do or do not know, many of us here are in the SCA, the Society for Creative Anachronism, and it's a living history group that recreates the Middle Ages. In the SCA, my name is Lynette. I'm also Debbie Coyle, but you can click on the email link down there and email me, or you can find my Facebook link all over the Fiberary site because I'm doing a bunch of stuff there, and you can text message Debbie Coyle. If you have any questions, let me know, ask me. If you need a one-on-one Zoom session, we can get together and do that as well. I actually bought a pro Zoom account this month, figuring it would come in handy so I can do however long meetings we need to do. One of the interesting things about Fiberary is Crow and I figured there'd be a few classes. We ended up with 40 classes. Plus a couple teachers are repeating themselves, so I think we've got 42, and then Bridget's extra, it's like whatever. Not only have the students been in a desert of communication and creativity and classes and whatnot, we teachers have been too. And a bunch of us really enjoy teaching. Somebody asked me recently what my favorite craft was, and I had to tell her honestly, it's teaching the crafts. Nowadays, whenever I learn something, I'm thinking, ooh, can I teach this? How can I teach this? So if anybody needs help outside of class, first of all, the video will be available. Give us a few days to get it ready, but feel free to contact me, and I can work with you on it, and we can play and do stuff together.
You're
Okay.
a very nice human.
I'm sorry, what?
I said you're a very nice human.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. But you'll find that a lot of our teachers here are exactly the same way.
Yes, all the teachers have been nice humans.
Yeah. Are you, I don't know who's talking. Are you in the SCA?
No, I'm not, but I should look into that because I like all of the stuff.
I'm putting something in the chat. Welcome.sca.org. It's the SCA is a worldwide organization that's got, I forget how many tens of thousands of people. It's mostly here in the US and Canada, but we're divided into kingdoms, and we've got kingdoms over in Europe, especially in Germany. And the really cool part is that when they have recreation events, they get to do them in real castles. But we get together and we recreate the arts and sciences of the Middle Ages and the costuming and various different fighting techniques. Although we make sure that we don't actually kill our friends, we just hit them a lot. We have armored combat, rapier combat, we have equestrian activities, and we have tons of arts and sciences. We have events where we get together just to give and take classes. And we have classes at other events that we have. And for the most part, we have very nice people. And we have people who are there because they're interested in what we do and they're interested in helping other people know what we do. So you might want to check it out. Yep, we've got somebody from the East Kingdom. The first few kingdoms weren't named terribly originally. The first kingdom ended up being called the West Kingdom because we started in the 1960s in Berkeley, California. The next kingdom was the East Kingdom, and you're never going to guess what the third kingdom was called. The Middle Kingdom. After that, the names got a little more original, and we've got, I forget how many kingdoms in the US and Canada right now. The really cool thing about the Fiberary event, even though it's not an SCA event, we've got a lot of people from the SCA, and we've got a lot of people from all over the world, England and Australia and New Zealand, as well as America, Canada, and several other countries. 20 kingdoms. The SCA has 20 kingdoms currently in the US or altogether. I don't remember which. But this is not meant to be an SCA commercial, but a lot of our people are SCA members and a lot of our teachers are SCA teachers. So this is an example of some of the things that you will see if you come play with us at SCA events. Can't really see anything yet. Okay. Having spent some time on that, I'm going to move on to the Purl Stitch because I want to make sure I show you guys how to bind off and how to knit a straight piece. If you're not ready to do the Purl Stitch, continue doing the knit stitch. Just watch me and pay attention to what's going on. The Purl Stitch is, what am I looking for? Share screen. The Purl Stitch is the opposite of the knit stitch. And there we go. How to knit stitches. So the Purl Stitch, we're going to lay the thread underneath the current loop. We're going to reach down through the top of the current loop, grab the new thread, bring it up to create a new loop, pull the original loop off the peg, and pull the new loop down onto it. So the difference is, if I'll stop screen sharing, if you'll all watch me for a minute. When we did the knit stitch, we put the thread on the top, we reached up from the bottom stitch, pulled the new stitch down, and popped it up. And I want you to take a look, if you can, at the texture here. If you look, you can see, turn off the light. No, you can't see, but there. You can see what I've got is I've got this loop coming out from the front of my previous loop. My previous loop is making a bar on the back, the inside of this stitch. And if you're working on a knit stitch or just did one, you can see that for yourself. Now with the purl stitch, instead of putting my thread at the top, coming up from the bottom and pulling that down, I'm going to leave my current stitches up at the top of the peg or near the top of the peg. I'm going to put my thread underneath for the purl stitch. I'm going to come down through the top of the top stitch, grab the new thread, rake, and come up. And I'm going to pull that up over the peg. And if you see now, the bar is now in front of the loop instead of being behind the loop. So you know you've done a purl stitch if the bar is facing you instead of facing away from you. And again, the difference between the knit stitch is this is the knit stitch, this is the purl stitch, and these are the bars we're talking about. With the knit stitch, the bar is in the back. This is the knit stitch section. This is the back of the knit stitches. That's where the bar ends up. This is the purl section. These are the bars in front, and you've got knit stitches in the back. So as a thing, a bunch of purl stitches don't look all that exciting by themselves, although there can be times that you want that for a pattern of just a row or two or several of them. But one cool thing that it will do for you is, you can see it right here. I did the E-wrap stitches and then the purl, E-wrap and purl, E-wrap and purl. And you can see how the purl stitches end up being back behind my E-wrap or knit stitches. What this would do for you if it was at the edge of something you were working on, it gives you ribs. And what those ribs do is, I don't think I have them on my socks. Yes, I do have them on my socks. You can see the ribs here. And what they do is they take and they pull your your fabric in, and they give it a lot of stretch, so that when I'm wearing this sock, it's going to give me that ribbed top that you have on the top of your socks that helps the sock stay up, and it helps it be whatever size it needs to be, as thick or as as wide or as narrow as it needs to be. So that's one of the best uses and one of the most common uses of purl stitches, is to give you this ribbing with knit and purl. But it can also be used in decorative ways when you're doing patterns in your knitting. And again, we're not going to talk about that right now because that's a whole nother class altogether. But just suffice it to say that to do the purl stitch, you're going to put your thread above the current group, pull it down, and then treat it the same way you did the knit stitch. Wait, what? No, sorry. What did I just do? I have now gotten myself confused. Purl stitch goes underneath. The purl stitch goes underneath. Ignore what I just said because it might have been wrong. You're going to pull that up. You know you've done it right because you've got the bar there. Underneath, pull it up. I see my bar. I know I've done it right. And I'm going to continue to go around doing that. Well, I need to go ahead and finish because I need to be able to show you how to bind off. And I just proceeded to do a knit stitch.
You're doing knit and purl, see?
Exactly. I'm doing ribbing. There we go. Yeah. Like I said, this is the first time I have taught this class. My husband, when he first started in the SCA, he was an arts and science minister, and he was the arts and science officer for his household group. There was about 20 or 30 of them that were a unit in the SCA, and every 2 weeks they would get together and he would teach them a new art or science, not because he knew that many, but because he would go to the library. This was many, many years ago. Get the information, teach himself the art or craft, and make a sample and go and teach them, and then go do another 2 weeks of researching and making a sample and teach them. And his classes were always a introduction to get you started. If you're interested, go do more stuff in the matter. And that's pretty much what this class is for me too. I'm going to be teaching it more because it's a lot of fun and you can do some really cool stuff on it. But for right now, it's just sort of look at this. What?
I wanted to learn it because we used to homeschool, and I would teach a lot of like knitting and crochet classes to the kids. And then because I did that, they thought I knew everything. So I had lots of kids that would ask for this. And I was like, I have not done that.
Yeah. And as you can see, it is not that tough.
Yeah.
And one of the things,
Littler kids that it's too hard to knit.
Yeah. And one of the things you can do is make spool knitters. And if you look at the bottom of my webpage, it's got some pages on how to make your own spool knitters. And you can find lots of information. Spool knitters are just four nails. So going around is quicker. And if you use a fairly big yarn, it goes fairly quickly. And one of the things you can do with that is make jump ropes.
Ah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not making a jump rope right now, DJ.
Sorry, got you in trouble there.
My kid and
Yeah.
Jay used to be on a jump rope team.
Oh, well, there you go.
We homeschooled, so.
Yeah. And so that would be a really cool thing. It wouldn't take as long as a spool knitter, and it wouldn't be as difficult to make or get spool knitters for them all. But you could make I'm sorry, let me start over. It would be quicker and easier than loom knitting, and easier than trying to get or make knitting looms for them. Spool knitters would be quicker to get and make, quicker to make a finished project, and then you could then turn it into and now we're going to go out and play with our jump rope.
Yeah.
Another thing that spool knitters were used for, and I got my mother's spool knitter and the rope she'd been making on it many, many, many years ago, and I tried to do this and I failed miserably. But if you've ever seen those braided rugs where it's basically a coil of thick yarn or whatever, or braided yarn, do
Mhm.
you guys know what I'm talking about? Let's see if I can share my screen. Braided rugs are a cool thing to do with your spool knitting.
Ah.
There we go. Rugs. Okay. This is what I mean by a braided rug. This is an oval one. And what you do, don't get bigger. Wrong one. What you do is you start in the middle and you just start going around and around and around and around and around till you get to the outside. And if we do get back to bigger, this one is actually made from things that have been braided together. But you can also use your spool knitted cord to make a braided rug like that. I tried, but I wasn't good at keeping it flat. So instead of getting a rug, I ended up with a braided bowl, a giant braided bowl.
But that's put all your
Obvi-
yarn.
Obviously, what?
You can put all your yarn and supplies in it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, obviously I had a tension issue. So what I want to show you now, and you guys don't have to do it if you don't want to, because you probably want to continue doing your project, but I want to show you how to bind off. And casting on and binding off are knitting terms. Casting on just means getting your threads onto in this case, the loom, so you can start working. Binding off means making a finished edge that will hold all the stitches in place and won't unravel. And there was info on that here, but I found it a bit confusing. So I went elsewhere. Although, if you're making a hat, it's very important to know that there's something called the gathered bind off, where you just put thread through each of the loops on the peg, pull it tight, and now you've got a cap that comes together at the top. So I found this site. Where are you? How to bind off on a knitting loom. That made life so much easier for me. It looks a little confusing here, but there you go. Now, they've done the E-wrap finish. I'm going to go ahead and do that just for simplicity's sake, but you can do whatever finish you want. So I'm going to stop sharing. There we go. I'm still learning how to teach online, and my mind is on what I want to say next, what I want to show you next. And so I forget about the stop sharing thing. So I'm doing my E-wrap again, just to get this all finished off.
Can
And
you
then-
do an entire project in the E-wrap?
Yes, you can do the entire project in the E-wrap, and that's what this is. This sample, well, it's E-wrap, except I did some purl stitches here. But you can do everything in the E-wrap. It gives you this nice big stitch here that's got a lot of give to it. So it's really good for caps, but it's also good for scarves and whatnot. So you can do the whole thing in E-wrap, and that's it. And in fact, what I ran into was something that said most, when you buy the looms, most looms just come with the E-wrap info. Whoops, I forgot to secure my thread. Just comes with the E-wrap info and doesn't teach you any other stitches. So it's all a matter of,
Lynette,
yes.
oh, if you look at me, I'm wearing my E-wrap hat I
Oh.
made.
Who are you?
Beth, Talina.
Selena. Okay, can you
Mhm.
spotlight?
Ah.
There we go. And by the way, it's been wonderful to see you again.
It is great to see you too. I really miss being down in Kaid.
Yeah, I miss seeing you. So this is her E-wrap hat. So not only do we get to see her, yay, but that's the hat that she made for E-wrap. And you did the gather bind off.
Yes.
Now, did you do any decreasing stitches?
No,
Or you just kept stitching the same amount all the
I did roll the brim, but I did not decrease the stitches at all at the top. I just pulled it all in together.
Cool. Cool. And it's a lot of fun and it's really easy and it's nice and warm, I presume.
I have a bunch of them now.
Yeah, where are you now? Up north where?
I'm in St. Helens, Oregon. So
Yeah.
about an hour north of Portland,
Yeah.
along the Columbia.
So she knows about warm hats.
There's still some snow on the ground.
Wow.
It's 36 degrees right now.
It was lovely out today here in Southern California.
Of course it was.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
We had a nice day in Virginia. We've been having like freezing rain and it's been horrible, but today was beautiful.
Oh, cool. Tina, are you wearing a cap too?
I am, but mine's not done on my loom. It's crocheted.
Ah, okay. So I'm going to show you how to do the bind off. And I'm going to show you the bind off screen again because quite frankly, I don't quite remember it again. You are going to work, you're going to have 2 stitches on every peg. You're going to work peg 1 and peg 2 the same way you normally would. This is peg 1, this is peg 2. And then you're going to take the stitch from peg 2, you're going to put it on peg 1. Then since you've got 2 stitches on one peg, the bottom one comes up over the top. That would be the stitch that was originally on peg 1 is going to come up over peg 2. And then, because you have nothing better to do, you're going to move the stitch from peg 1 to peg 2. You're going to work the stitch on page 3, bottom one over the top. You've now got 2. So this one's going to come over this one. You're going to work that stitch and you're going to bring that stitch back over to this peg. Confused yet?
Yes.
That's why I had to go find another page to show it to me. So this is my peg 1 and my peg 2. I'm going to bring the bottom peg over the top, bottom stitch over the top on both pegs. Then peg number 2, the one that's the farthest along in the direction I'm working, I'm going to take the first one, bring it down. The one that's furthest along the direction I'm working, I'm going to bring it over here onto the peg before it. Okay. Now I've got 2 stitches here. Bottom stitch comes over the top, and then this peg comes back over. This peg comes back over here, I said. There you go. And then we've got to have a 1 and a 2. We're going to work this one. And I'll tell you a secret. I mean, you could just go ahead and work them all now if you wanted to, and then come back and do this. This one is going to come up over here. The bottom one's going to come over the top. Peg's going to come back over to the one that's furthest along our direction of travel. Bring this up. This guy comes over here. Bottom over the top. Does it make more sense now? You can see how easy it is.
I think if you're a knitter, it's easier because it's the same principle as binding off.
It is the same principle, but I find it a little weirder and more awkward. Okay. And so all I'm doing, if you look here, let me put this down. If you look, what you can see what I'm doing is I'm just taking, I don't know if you can see it on here. I'm just taking and I'm weaving. I've got these two loops, okay? And I've got the one that's forward most in the direction I'm going, this one, and the one that's behind. And what I want to do is I want to just take and put, and I've gotten myself confused, the bottom one, the old one through, nope. I want to take the new one and I want to put it through the old one so that it kind of looks like crochet. It kind of looks like I've done a crochet chain here. And I wish you could see this as well as I could see it. Oh, there. You can almost see it now. Can you see the chain that I've made here as I'm putting each stitch through the previous stitch? That's really all you're doing here, is you're saying, I want this stitch here to come through this stitch here. So I'm going to move it over here. I'm going to put this stitch over it so that this stitch now comes through that stitch, and I'm going to put it down here. Does that make more sense to people?
Yes.
Cool. Because I just explained it to myself too. This is what I love about teaching is as you're trying to help people understand it, you understand more about it. It's how I got A's in algebra in high school. The person behind me didn't understand it as well as I did. So, and we had time in class to do homework and to help other students with homework. So I spent a lot of time explaining it to her and understood more about it as I was explaining it to her. And so we're just going to go along doing that whole thing. If you're not doing it along with me, that's fine. You've got that one website that I showed you. And oh, and also the one thing I haven't given you here is a lot of links to videos. There, if you go on YouTube and search for loom knitting, you will find a lot so that you can actually watch people do it. Plus, this video will be up so you can watch the video and see, again, what I've done. And again, you can always contact me if you have questions or if you need help with anything. I'd be more than happy to. And if you're interested in the SCA, this was not a recruiting event, but if you are interested in the SCA and have questions, feel free to contact me about that too. Quite frankly, the SCA is what's kept me sane during this last year. There's been a lot of classes and meetings and just meetups and just opportunities to get outside the house without going outside the house. And just a lot of people that are friends that are there in case you're just about ready to crack up and need somebody to say something nice to you.
I didn't get a chance to chime in earlier, but I'm also in the SCA. I'm up in North Shield, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And we're still in the deep freeze.
I bet. Wow.
It's probably about -12 right now, I think, Celsius.
Oh, there
No,
is.
I'm wrong. -3. It was
Oh,
-12 last night this time.
Oh, well,
So
that's,
-3 would be around, I guess, 25 Fahrenheit.
ooh. Yeah, I'm a wimp. I'm born and raised in Southern California, and I cannot see me doing what Beth did and moving up to where there's snow and cold.
Yeah.
Well,
Californians
before I did that, I went and worked in Antarctica for a season, so I kind of get used to it.
So Oregon is nice and warm.
It is.
I
It's
bet.
Well,
not
the
minus 70.
the trade-off is in June. It
Uh-huh.
doesn't get dark till 10:30.
Ah, okie dokie. Now I've got down to my last 2 stitches. So I had this stitch over here. I've worked that stitch. I've moved it over to here. I have 2 stitches. So this one comes up over that one. But now what do I do? And that's the easy part. Well, the hard part is you have to cut. You have to cut your thread and cut it enough so that you leave yourself room to weave the thread into your work. But now what I do is I make that loop bigger and I put my cut thread through the loop and then I tighten it down. And that is my bind off. And you can see I've got a fairly tight bind off here. I don't know, there, you can see the chain better there. This is my chain here. And you can see it's a lot tighter and firmer than, and more organized than my cast on here. Had I done a chain cast on, it would have been tighter. On the other hand, if you're looking for some kind of a frilly edge, that makes a nice edge. But if part of it gets caught, look at what happens. It tightens everything up. Oh, here's an interesting thing about working in the round. For those of you who knit, this is what we've done. We've knit in the round, but you can see how these two don't exactly match up. So what I probably should have done before I put my thread through that final loop was put it through here first, and a needle would have been real handy for this. Put it through my first loop and then tighten it up here to close that gap. The reason for that is you're doing a round on top of a round on top of a round on top of a round, and where this one ends, that one started down there. So they're not actually on the same level. So anyway, that is my today's sample for the round stuff. If you want to work straight, now, if you want to work straight, there's the straight looms, which I've tossed over there and I can't get at them. You can use a straight loom or you can use a round loom. And all you're going to do is, oh, the other way that you can start your thread off is by doing a slip stitch, if you know how to do that, and slip stitch your thread to here. You can also, I saw one that suggested slip stitching it to the first peg, but I found the knot got in my way and made things uncomfortable. So if I want to do something straight, what I'm going to do is I'm just not going to go all the way. And this also works on a spool knitter. And I saw something that someone did on a spool knitter with 4 nails. They did a straight piece, and it was really cool because it ended up with this groove down the middle that would have looked really, really cool if you then came along and sewed a row of beads through that groove and then use that flat piece with the beads down the center as some trim. So what I'm going to do is I've gotten to the last peg here, but instead of coming over here where I normally would, I'm going to put all my loops down, and I just went ahead and used the E-wrap start. I'm going to put all my loops down. And instead of going back to peg number 1, I'm just going to wrap it around my current peg, the peg that I just finished with. So you see I have a gap here. And then I'm just going to take the bottom one over the top, and then it's just going to sort of fall to the back here and be loose and weird, but that's okay. Now I can go through and I can do the E-wrap if I want. I can do the flat stitch if I want. I can do whatever stitch that I want. And this is one of the reasons why I said I don't know that it matters whether you're right-handed or left-handed, because now I'm going the other direction. So if you're working flat on a round loom, you're going to be going one direction and then the other and then the other. So you're going to be kind of doing it the right-handed way, the left-handed way, whatever. I've taken and wrapped my thread all the way around the loom, and I'm just kind of holding it over here at the end to get it out of my way. I'm still using my right hand to flip the loops, but I'm going the other direction. Instead of going clockwise, I'm now going counterclockwise. And as a teacher, I find I have to be careful about using the phrase clockwise and counterclockwise nowadays, because depending on what age you are, you don't know what that means. Okay. So then when I get to the end, and also I did not, oh, there we go. I've lost my thread. I did not have to go all the way around. I could have just used 4 pegs or 12 pegs or however many pegs I wanted to. When I get back to the start, again, I'm going to respect that gap, and I am just going to wrap my thread. Okay, I'm at my first peg now. I'm just going to take the thread, wrap it around, and bring it to the front, or go from the back to the front, whichever makes you happy, as long as you do it consistently. And I'm going to come up, and then I'm going to start all over again, going back the other way. And again, you can do this E-wrap if you want. You can do it flat stitch, which is what I just did, knit stitch, purl stitch, a combination of the two. And you're just going to pull off a flat piece because they never connected. And you can see my edge here. The stitches just sort of blend in. You get this little loop here, but you get that consistently, and they just pull in and become part of the fabric, even though when you're working on it, it feels like they're loose and going to be weird and in the way. And on this one, I did the knit stitch the whole time. And again, this is what the knit side looks like. This is what the purl side looks like. So you could do a scarf this way. The scarf in this case would be this wide, and then I would just keep going on and on for the length that I wanted. If you use one of the flat looms that I showed you earlier, then you can just go back and forth without going round. If you use the big round ones, you'll get a wider piece of fabric than you would on the small one here. And that's, I believe, basically everything I had set up to cover for you. Double knitting is fun and exciting, and I found this 4-part thing here, which I had to work to find all 4 parts. You would think they would include a link to the next part, but no, they don't. And this shows you how they use one of the flat looms to work on the project. And it shows you all kinds of info about the looms and the knitting. This would be the E-wrap stitch, I'm guessing. Maybe they all are. And they used my favorite color, purple. Then if you come back to my page, you can see part 2, 3, and 4, and part 4 on there. This is how you warp up for double knit. And you're, instead of going round and around on the outside with pegs, you're going across from one peg to the one across from it. And then you come back at another angle and you do all kinds of fun and exciting things. I have not done double knit on the knitting loom. I understand basically how it works, but I haven't played with it yet. But it shows you what you can make. And these are even warmer than what you would make on normally on the loom, because they're double rows of fabric. So this is a pattern here for that hat and the scarf, I think. Don't know what they've done with this thread here, what's going on. But so you've got double knit stuff, information there. And then, as I said, you can make your own spool knitter. And this one, oh, this one was a video that had several, oh, I don't know how to, oh, hang on. It had several different spool knitters on it. I thought it was kind of fun, the different things she made. And this is with a thread spool. It was a lot more fun with the old wooden thread spools. Here's one where she's taken a bottle and added, I don't know what these kind of nails are called. And she had some other fun stuff there too that just were like, oh gosh, I could do that. And then of course, because all crafters have toilet paper rolls, I had to give you info on how to make French knitters out of toilet paper rolls. And yeah, of course we use toilet paper rolls. And those could probably be bamboo skewers too, by the way. And then this was another toilet paper. Oh yeah. Oh, this one was so much fun. I love this one. They used hairpins. And they used, this looks like a fairly thick roll. I don't know that that's a toilet paper roll.
Maybe from
And
tape.
That's what?
Maybe the tape, you know, those big tapes.
Oh, yeah,
for,
yeah.
like,
A
stuff.
tape core, yeah. And then they've used tape or something to keep them on. And so they've gone crazy and said, I don't have to do just 4. I can do as many as I want. And that one just looks so easy and fun. It was like, yeah. Although my problem is if I used a toilet paper roll, I'd sit on it and it would get squashed. So I've got stuff here for you. I've got a few patterns that I found. Oh, and like I said, the people who make the equipment want to get you using it. So here's to make on the KB or any loom, knitting looms, slippers and hats, and that's a different kind of loom, a pin weaving loom. Lots of hats, pumpkins, scarves. You'll find that hats and scarves are very popular when it comes to knitting looms, and little girls' blouses and dresses and socks. The sock loom is really kind of cool. I don't know that I would recommend it for your first project. Although I think it was probably my first project, so I guess I should not say that much. Twisted wire jewelry set. I'm not sure where that comes in. Little baby booties, gloves. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, that's interesting to figure out how to make gloves on the loom. So you can find a lot of patterns out there that you can play with. And you can just play with it and be creative and see what you can do. This was just me playing around saying, well, how do I add color? How do I subtract color? How do I alternate color? And by the way, when you alternate color, the inside looks like this because you've got the strands of where you're running the color from one side to another. Where's my camera? There, if you can see that. And as one of the students said earlier, there's other things you can do with these looms too. You can do a weaving project where your threads are going back and forth. And you can do, I suppose you can make some kind of a dream catcher on it. And those old God's eyes, what are they called? Where you do the threads across in all directions, and then you'd weave around and around and around inside of it, kind of looking like that braided loom in a way. So if you get tired of using your knitting loom for knitting, there's a whole bunch of other stuff you can do with it too. So I've talked a bunch here. Oh, cotter pins. Yes, I think those were cotter pins. Thank you, Carrie. I keep reading that as Carl because I'm too far from the screen. So can we go back to gallery view? Does anybody have any project that they worked on tonight that they want to show us? Show us what you did and how you did.
I ripped it out and started again.
That's always a valid thing to do. I've done that many, 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 many times, I have to admit, especially in a class like this. And this was just meant to be an introduction to get you started doing it. So yeah, tear it out and start all over again, practice the stitches.
Well, that's why I got to bind off too that way to practice that while we were doing it. And then.
Perfect. Perfect. Any questions? So Beth, I don't know who it was, but I posted back when I wasn't sure that we'd get enough people. I posted in the Principality of the Mists, I think, Arts and Sciences page about Fiberary. And I forget who it was who contacted me. And she said, I think about 2/3 of Antier is going to be joining Fiberary.
It's pretty popular up here.
Cool. Oh, that is wonderful. I'm just so glad. It's so fun. We'd see these bumps. And I wouldn't necessarily know why. And one of them, I saw this big bump, and somebody said a day or two later, I hope you don't mind, but I posted, if you saw that crocheted umbrella parasol, yeah, she posted that on a worldwide knitting and crochet group that she belonged to. I said, oh, that's why I got a bunch of new members. Got it.
And why you had, what, 80 or 100 people want to attend.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, we're up to 1,140 the last I checked.
What was the size of the biggest class?
We've had, one of the classes said it was going to have like 80 people in it.
I think that was the parasol one.
That was the one. I don't think we've really gotten more than 40 at most.
That's still a lot.
Oh, it's still a lot, yeah. When you're teaching online, anything more than 6 is really, after that, it's all the same. But I think they've been running about, 10 to 30 people.
Oh, I think I froze.
Who's that? So the classes have been well attended, not hugely attended, which is nice. But I've noticed that the videos on YouTube, we've got like, 40 or more views on a bunch of them. So they're getting seen either by the students wanting to see it again and work on it, or the people who didn't get a chance to see it because they were busy or because they were in a different time zone.
Or it's because there's 2 classes at once and you have to choose.
I know. And that was, I've been making this event up as I went along. like I said, we thought maybe 50 to 100 people. We'd have a few classes. And then when we ended up having so many classes, but we didn't have so many people attending, I had this really cool idea. We do it all on one, each night would be one Zoom session. And the main Zoom session would be a hangout for people to talk and work on projects. And then we'd break it out into 2 different classrooms. And then you could go to one or the other class, or you could do the hangout. But, you know, then we're getting 600, 900 more people. And we're getting people who say they want to do, you know, 60 people want to come to this class, or 40 people want to come to this class. And a pro Zoom session can only handle 100. Now, I had 3 Zoom sessions available that could do 300 people.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it's like, we're just getting into numbers that are totally unmanageable.
Yeah.
And trying to do a hangout that size. We were going to do one kickoff event. And it was going to be lovely, and people were going to hang out and talk. And we kept getting more and more people. And I'm going, okay, well, we can get one of the 300 people to host it, but how can you have a hangout and talk when you've got over, you know, 20 people or so? So now I'm sitting here going, okay, now I got to divide it up. How do I divide it up? I was like, topics. We'll do topics. We'll have the weaving over here, and the dyeing over here, and the knitting and crocheting over here. Sorry, knitting people who don't like crochet, and vice versa. I didn't want to offend you. Yeah. And then, okay, that'll work. And I have some of the teachers are Zoom people. So Kat, who's teaching spinning and has a Zoom, could be the host for the spinning Zoom. And oh, wait. So then I could make it like a meet the teacher thing. So you could go from room, you know, how do we get people to circulate, not just stay there? Well, they could go from room to room and circulate and meet the teachers. And maybe I should tell the teachers about that. It's been interesting, and I'm really thrilled with the oh, good. I'm glad it worked out well. I was really scared about how that kickoff session was going to go. I'm really glad about the reception it's gotten, and how well it's gone, and how happy it's made people. But my theme for this event is the swan, smooth on the surface and paddling like crazy underneath.
I bet all of you guys have done a tremendous amount of work. I mean, pulling this off.
Knock on wood, because the last time I said this, my internet went out 45 minutes before I was supposed to teach a class. The nose. Yeah. I managed to do it 2 nights ago with 2 phones and books and stuff. Except for the people processing the classes for YouTube, it's been a lot of, you know, stuff that has to be done, but not really as much work as you might think. And things have gone really fairly smoothly. I had one class, the story of the dark arts teacher. I had one class, the wet felting. Somebody sent in a thing, I'd like to teach wet felting. And she sent me a couple other class things. And then she said, you know what? I'm stupid. I can't take on that much. I'm going to drop the wet felting class. I said, great. Thank you for, because that was way at the beginning before we'd even started class. I said, thank you for doing it now. That's wonderful. But I wonder, I bet you have people on Fiberary, someone knows how to do it. So someone did and volunteered to do it. And so I had my second teacher. And so the morning, well, a week before the class, she posted that she had to leave town suddenly, but she'd brought her wool and her laptop to make sure that she could teach the class.
Oh, nice.
And then she posted, I had to go to the 99-cent store to get the rest of the stuff I needed. So here's this really cool picture of all the things I bought and I'm repurposing for it. And then the morning before that, the class that was that evening, she said, my mother just had a really bad turn. I can't teach tonight. I'm sorry. I can't teach tonight. And I no, obviously that
Right.
comes first. But I said, huh. So I put out a call on a couple places. It took me 2 hours to get a new teacher. Bridget ended up teaching it, and she said, "Oh, so I'm the dark arts teacher at Hogwarts, right?" But there was just that one. Knock wood.
Wow.
I'm not really superstitious, but I'm knocking wood because um, it's really gone really well. We haven't had too many people who, I don't know how to use Zoom. Please help me. Oh my God, how does this work? Um, and it's got, and the thing about doing online events, you don't have to worry about the weather, other than will it knock out someone's internet? And the site setup and teardown is a lot easier and quicker. Travel time, real simple, I'm not driving 4 hours to get to the event. So it's really been a lot of fun, and I'd be willing to keep doing it and extend it into March or whatnot, but it has been a certain amount of work on my part and a certain amount of, I really can't concentrate on anything else right now. But more importantly, I've got, what is it, 8 people, I think, as Zoom hosts, covering 40 classes on 14 days, plus we added another 3 days, I think. And I really don't want to burn them out. I really don't want to say, yeah, let's do this for another month. You guys can do this, right?
We can aim at another one 6 months from now.
Exactly. It's like we'll wait a little bit to do it.
You got to have the time where you celebrate how wonderful it was, and
Exactly.
then you start planning the next one.
You have to have time to practice all these things, because I'm like, going through trying to get every single one. So then you need the practice time. So March is practice all the new February skills.
We'll put a pin in this. Look at Jocelyn. Can we spotlight Jocelyn? And she's using variegated yarn, which looks really cool.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, pretty.
Nice. See, I did teach something.
Oh yeah, you learned a lot. I've never done this at all, and
It's a lot of fun. And it's one of those things that's repetitive enough that you can do sort of a Zen thing with it, So you can unspotlight her. One thing that I am going to do is a friend has loaned me one of her slots on her premium YouTube. So as long as she's still paying for it, we can keep the YouTube videos up.
oh, awesome.
And a couple people have offered to make some videos specifically to add. Those of you from Kaid and those of you from out of Kaid may know Bijo Trimble, aka Bijo Griffin, or Flavia, whatever her name. She has had several names. She's offered to make some videos for us, which I'll put up there when we get them. And I'll be teaching a cross stitch class, and Tim will be teaching a bobbin lace class in the coming months. I figured it's on Zoom. Why don't we go ahead and record it and add it to Fiberary?
Awesome.
So hopefully I'll be adding new stuff there, but also the Fiberary Facebook group, I'm going to keep it up. So I'm hoping, as Tina was saying, as you practice this and do stuff, keep posting your finished projects. I don't know if you want to post a question to a teacher. First of all, it would probably be better if you went to the event or to something that the teacher posted and contact them directly. They may not be paying attention to, Facebook doesn't always notify you when somebody mentions you on something. So you might want to contact them directly, but we'll keep the group open. And one thing that I want to do is try putting out more online fiber events for people.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. The thing that made me really, really sad about this, I've been going to online fiber events and I've been going to SCA classes and stuff, and that's been wonderful. A lot of people that have come here, even SCA, have said, It's been 8 months or 12 months or whatever, and I haven't been doing anything." They haven't gotten plugged in to those things. So I want to help get people plugged in and keep them plugged in. So if you've got any events that you know of, share them with us. I just ask that it's fiber related, that it's online. Even if it's an event that costs money. Free events obviously are better, but money events are okay too. And we'll just
I would appreciate that because I've been having trouble finding events online to attend until February.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy. If you're in the SCA, there's a couple things that you can go to that have collected information about various events. Finding classes can be challenging. There are so many out there, but if you aren't connected to the right places, yeah, they're easy to miss. So that's why I'm saying, if you know of anything, post it. And Tina?
Yeah, the Living Felt, which they sell felt stuff. They do a Woolly Wednesday every Wednesday. It's 3:00 for me, so it'd be earlier for you. It's in Texas, but that's free, and they teach little, sometimes needle felt, sometimes wet felting, and it's free, and it's a really nice community, and they do really cute little tutorials.
If you could post that on the list, get the information and post it. And
Okay.
just, when you say 3:00, this is what I've learned over the last year. Make sure you put your time zone on it.
Yeah, because it's 2:00 in Texas that they do
Yeah.
it. It's 3:00 for me, so it would be noon for California.
Yeah. So just put, whatever time you want and the time zone, and then the
I'll do
rest.
that tomorrow because it's going on midnight for me.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. And one thing, I started out, I'm going to have to do something about, okay. I started out a list of here's upcoming events, but of course it's gotten buried in the Facebook group. So I'm going to have to do something about that. See if we can't, I don't know how to create, well, I've got it added to the bottom of the FAQ, I guess. But anyway, post it to the list.
If you pin it, it'll stay at the top.
Yeah, but I can only pin one thing, and I've got the FAQ pinned.
You could also do it as an announcement. That keeps it near the top.
Okay. Okay. I'll do that then. And we'll see if we just can't help people get doing more stuff, because
Well, it's just mentally keeps us okay.
exactly.
It's us connected to people outside of our house.
Mm-hmm.
Or
And
like in my case, where there is nobody else in my house.
Exactly. I mean, I've lucky. So, I'm, except for when we drive each other insane, I've got company. It's the people who are stuck alone in a house that just,
Yeah.
you get so many bonus points from me. I don't know how you've been doing this.
Well, my protege lives in Hillsborough, which is pretty close. And so I've been interacting with her and a bunch of her friends. So they've been introducing me to the people up here.
Okay.
But yeah, if Kendra wasn't here, I'd be having a big problem. But she's a social butterfly, so she keeps me connected.
That's fabulous. That is fabulous. I see that I've lost a few people, and I know we're going off topic here. Were there any other questions or anything that
Nope,
anyone
that's
had?
great.
Again, yes, Honorable Clover is a really interesting thing on Facebook to find. They've got a bunch of classes and stuff like that. So you might want to check them out and look in the chat. But again, please contact me if you have any questions. if you want to show me what you did, or if you have problems or you want to work one-on-one, and post your pictures to the list. Let people see what you're doing and show people what we did so they can think about doing it themselves.
Awesome. Thank you
Will
so
do.
much.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you for coming. I can't teach if I don't have students, so thank you for letting me teach.
Oh, thank you for teaching
Thank
us.
you.
You're welcome. I'm glad I could do it.
I'll
And
see you
say
on
hi to
Friday.
Timothy for me.
I will. I'll hug him for
Thank
you.
you from
Thank
Canada.
you.
Thank you.
Try to
Good
stay
night.
warm in
You all.
Canada.
Bye-bye. Thank you.